The apartment smelled of saffron and imported wine. Emma Torres stood in front of her floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker to life 32 stories below. Her reflection stared back at her. Sleek black dress, gold earrings, hair pulled into a perfect chignon. She looked the part. She always looked the part. Behind her, the dining table gleamed under soft Edison bulbs. 8 place settings, bone china, crystal glasses that caught the light like tiny prisms. Everything was perfect. Everything had to be. Her phone buzzed. Natalie. OMG, can't wait for tonight. Should I bring my Hermes clutch, or is that too much? Emma typed back quickly. Bring it, everyone's dressing up. She set the phone down and exhaled slowly, her fingers trembling just enough to notice. This dinner wasn't just a dinner. It was a test. Natalie, Brooke, Jordan, Sloan, these weren't just friends. They were connections. The daughters of hedge fund managers, real estate moguls, venture capitalists, women who'd never taken the subway, never clipped coupons, never worn the same winter coat for 5 years straight. Emma had clawed her way into their circle. Marketing executive at a top firm designer wardrobe bought on credit. A vocabulary carefully scrubbed of anything that hinted at where she'd come from. And it had worked. Until 3 days ago. She'd been at brunch with Brooke when the topic shifted to mothers. Brooke had laughed, twirling her mimosa. My mom's on the board of the Met now. I swear she lives for those galas. Natalie chimed in. Mine just launched a wellness retreat in Tulum. It's very on brand for her. Then they'd turned to Emma. What does your mom do? The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma's throat tightened. She could see her mother's face so clearly. The lines around her eyes, the calluses on her hands, the way she smiled even when she was exhausted. Her mother, Rosa, who cleaned office buildings at night, who took 2 buses to get home, who sent Emma care packages in college filled with homemade empanadas wrapped in aluminum foil because she couldn't afford fancy gifts. Her mother, who loved her with a fierceness that had never once asked for anything in return. Emma had opened her mouth and said, "She's in property management." It wasn't technically a lie. Rosa did manage properties. She mopped their floors, scrubbed their toilets, emptied their trash. But the way Emma said it, the way she let the words sit there without clarification, made it sound like something else entirely. Brooke had nodded approvingly. Oh, that's solid. Real estate's always smart. And Emma had smiled and sipped her drink and hated herself just a little bit more. Now, standing in her apartment, she checked her phone again. No messages from her mother. Good. Rosa didn't know about the dinner. Emma had been careful. She'd told her mother she was busy with work events all week, that they'd catch up soon, that everything was fine, because if Rosa showed up here, with her thrift store cardigan and her accented English and her hands that still smelled faintly of bleach, everything Emma had built would crumble. The buzzer rang. Emma's heart jumped. She pressed the intercom. Yes? It's Natalie! Let us up, babe! Emma pressed the button and smoothed her dress. The elevator dinged. Voices spilled into the hallway. Laughter, the click of heels, the rustle of shopping bags. Emma! Natalie swept in first, arms wide, her perfume a cloud of jasmine and privilege. This place is gorgeous. You didn't tell me you had a view like this. Brooke followed, already pulling out her phone. I'm posting this. Your aesthetic is chef's kiss. Jordan and Sloan trailed behind, admiring the art on the walls, the succulents in hand-thrown ceramic pots, the bookshelf arranged by color. Emma smiled, playing hostess, pouring wine, accepting compliments, but in the back of her mind, a single thought pulsed like a warning light. Please don't let her come tonight. Please. Rosa Torres woke before the alarm. She always did. The apartment was still dark, the kind of quiet that only exists in the hours before the city wakes. She lay there for a moment, listening to the radiator clank, The muffled sound of her neighbor's television through the wall, the distant wail of a siren blocks away. Her body ached. It always ached now. Her knees, her lower back, her shoulders. 53 years old, and her hands looked 70. She flexed her fingers slowly, feeling the stiffness in the joints, but she didn't complain. She never complained. Rosa pushed herself up and padded to the tiny kitchen. The linoleum was cold beneath her feet. She filled the coffee maker with water, measured out the grounds carefully. Not too much, make it last, and pressed the button. While it brewed, she opened the refrigerator. Half a carton of eggs, some leftover rice, a tomato starting to soften. She'd make it work. She always made it work. On the counter, her phone sat face up. The screen was cracked in the corner, had been for 8 months, but it still worked. She picked it up and opened her messages. The last text from Emma was from 4 days ago. Emma, busy week, will call soon. Love you. Rosa had responded with a heart emoji and a simple, take care of yourself, mi amor. No response since. She told herself it was fine. Emma was busy. Emma had an important job, important friends, an important life. That's what Rosa had worked for. That's what all those late nights and double shifts and skipped meals had been for, so her daughter could have more. Rosa poured her coffee into a chipped mug, the one Emma had made in middle school art class, lopsided and painted with uneven flowers. It was the only thing in the apartment Emma had made with her own hands, and Rosa used it every single day. She sat at the small table and opened her planner. Today's schedule was written in careful handwriting. 6:30 a.m., clean offices, Park Avenue South. 12 p.m., lunch, bring from home. 1 p.m., meeting, don't forget documents. 6 p.m., event preparation. 7:30 p.m., keynote speech. Her stomach fluttered. Tonight was the summit, the one she'd been preparing for all month, the business leaders of tomorrow event at the Tribeca Hotel, where she'd been invited to speak about her journey, about the company she'd built from nothing. Rosa Torres, CEO of Torres Property Solutions, not a cleaning woman anymore, not for 5 years now. She'd started the business with 3 clients and a borrowed van. Now she employed 47 people, managed contracts across the city, and had just secured a partnership with a major commercial real estate developer. She'd been featured in Forbes, interviewed on a podcast about immigrant entrepreneurship, invited to speak at business schools, and Emma didn't know. Rosa had tried to tell her. She'd called last month excited, nervous. Mija, I have something to share. But Emma had been rushing. Mom, I'm heading into a meeting. Can I call you back? She never called back. Rosa had tried again, left a voicemail, sent a text with a photo of the Forbes article. Emma had responded, That's great, Mom, proud of you. 3 words, no follow-up questions, no tell me more, no how did this happen? It stung, but Rosa understood Emma was ashamed, not of who Rosa had become, but of who she'd been. The mother who'd picked her up from school smelling like cleaning solution. The mother who'd worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford the class trip to Washington. The mother who'd sewn Emma's prom dress by hand because buying one wasn't possible. Emma had spent her whole childhood watching other mothers, the ones who drove SUVs and wore workout clothes that cost more than Rosa made in a week, the ones who didn't have accents, didn't work nights, didn't cry quietly in the bathroom when the bills piled up. And now Emma had a chance to be one of those daughters, the ones who belonged. Rosa didn't blame her, but it broke her heart. She finished her coffee and stood, rinsing the mug carefully. She changed into her work clothes, plain jeans, a navy blue polo with the Torres Property Solutions logo embroidered on the chest, comfortable sneakers. In the bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection, gray streaks in her dark hair, lines around her mouth, eyes that had seen too much struggle but still held warmth. Tonight she'd stand on a stage in front of 200 people and tell her story. Business leaders, entrepreneurs, journalists. They'd listen, they'd applaud, they'd shake her hand and ask for advice. And Emma wouldn't be there, because Rosa hadn't told her, because she was afraid that if she did, Emma would make an excuse, would say she was busy, would promise to come and then cancel at the last minute. And Rosa couldn't bear that, not tonight. So she'd go alone. She'd give her speech, she'd accept the recognition, and afterward she'd come home to this quiet apartment and pretend it didn't hurt. She grabbed her bag, checked that the speech notes were inside, and locked the door behind her. The subway ride downtown was long. Rosa sat with her bag in her lap, watching the city blur past the windows, teenagers with headphones, a man in a suit reading the news on his phone, a mother holding a sleeping toddler. She thought about Emma, about the little girl who used to wait by the window for Rosa to come home, who'd run to the door and throw her arms around Rosa's legs, not caring that her mother smelled like pine sol and exhaustion. Where had that girl gone? At 59th Street, Rosa's phone buzzed, an email from the event organizer. Subject, final reminder, tonight's keynote. She opened it. Dear Ms. Torres, we're excited to welcome you this evening. Your story is truly inspiring, and we know it will resonate deeply with our attendees. The event begins at 7:30 p.m. Please arrive by 7 for final sound check. Looking forward to seeing you. Rosa took a breath. Tonight she would speak her truth, and maybe, just maybe, Emma would hear it someday. The apartment hummed with the sound of wealth at ease. Laughter spilled from the living room where Natalie held court, her wine glass catching the light as she gestured dramatically. So I told him, if you're going to propose, at least make it Instagram-worthy. I mean, come on, Brooke shrieked. You didn't? I absolutely did, and guess what? He rebooked the whole thing. We're going to Santorini next month. Emma moved through the space like a conductor, refilling glasses, adjusting napkins, making sure everything remained flawless. Her smile was practiced, automatic. She'd learned to wear it like armor. Sloane stood by the bookshelf, trailing her finger along the spines. You've actually read all of these? Most of them, Emma lied. Half were purchased specifically for their aesthetic value. Muted covers, interesting fonts, the kind of books that signaled intellectual without requiring actual reading. Jordan appeared from the kitchen holding a bottle of Sancerre. Babe, this wine is insane. Where do you shop? There's a place in Tribeca, Emma said smoothly. I'll text you the name. Another lie. She'd bought it at Trader Joe's and peeled off the price sticker. The evening had a rhythm now. Compliments flowed freely. Everyone admired everyone else's outfit, their hair, their recent vacation photos. The conversation drifted from restaurants to real estate to a mutual friends engagement ring. Emma stood at the edge of it all, participating but separate, like watching herself perform from a distance. This was what she'd wanted, wasn't it? To be here, to belong, to sit among women who'd never known what it meant to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. Emma, this charcuterie board is art, Natalie called out, snapping a photo. You need to start a catering business or something. Emma laughed. I just follow Pinterest tutorials. Well, it's gorgeous. My mom would die for this at her next event. There it was again. My mom. The mothers were always present in their conversations, even when they weren't in the room. Accessories to success, proof of lineage, women who'd never had to sacrifice anything, who'd simply passed down their privilege like inherited jewelry. Brooke leaned back on the couch, crossing her legs. Speaking of moms, Emma, you never told us more about yours. Property management, right? Emma's hand tightened around her wine glass. Yeah, she said lightly. She manages a few buildings. Commercial or residential? Mix of both. That's smart. My dad always says real estate is where generational wealth happens. Brooke sipped her wine. Is she coming tonight? I'd love to meet her. Emma's throat constricted. Oh, no, she's actually traveling for work this week. Site visits. The lie came so easily now, it frightened her how easily. That's too bad, Sloane said. I feel like our moms would all get along. We should do a mother-daughter brunch sometime. Totally, Natalie agreed. Like a whole thing. Bottomless mimosas, the works. Emma smiled and nodded and felt something inside her curl up and die. She excused herself to check on the main course, roasted chicken with herb butter, because it looked impressive but was actually simple. In the kitchen, alone, she braced her hands on the counter and breathed. You're fine, this is fine, just get through dinner. Her phone sat on the counter, screen dark. No messages from her mother. Relief and guilt tangled in her chest. The oven timer beeped. Emma pulled on mitts and removed the chicken, golden and perfect. She could do this. She could pull this off. Back in the living room, Jordan had opened another bottle. Can we talk about how insane the housing market is right now? My parents are helping me look at co-ops and the prices are... The doorbell rang. Everyone looked toward the door. Emma froze. Were you expecting someone else? Natalie asked. No, Emma said quickly. Probably just a delivery. But even as she said it, something cold settled in her stomach. She crossed to the door and checked the video intercom. The screen showed the building's lobby, and standing there, looking small and uncertain in a simple beige cardigan and dark pants, was her mother, Rosa Torres, holding a canvas tote bag, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face tired but hopeful. Emma's world tilted. No, 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 no. She pressed the intercom button with a trembling finger. Mom! Rosa's face brightened on the screen. Mija, I tried calling, but you didn't answer. I have something exciting to tell you. Can I come up? I'm on my way to an event, but I wanted to stop by for just a moment. Mom, now isn't a good time. Behind Emma, the conversation had quieted. She could feel them listening. Rosa's smile faltered on the screen. Oh, you have company? Yeah, I'm having dinner with some friends. I'll only stay a minute, I promise. I just want to see you. It's been weeks. Emma closed her eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She could say no. She could tell her mother to leave. She could protect everything she'd built. But Natalie's voice floated from behind her. Is that your mom? Let her come up. We'd love to meet her. Emma's hand hovered over the button. Rosa waited on the screen, hope and love written across her weathered face. And Emma, hating herself, hating the world, hating the girl she'd become, pressed the button. Okay, she whispered. Come up. The intercom clicked off. Emma turned to face her friends, her smile brittle as glass. My mom's here, she said, just for a quick hello. Perfect. Brooke clapped her hands together. Now we finally get to meet her. Emma walked to the kitchen and gripped the edge of the sink. In the reflection of the window, she could see her apartment. The expensive furniture, the designer dishes, the life she'd constructed brick by careful brick. And in 60 seconds, her mother would walk through that door and tear it all down, not because Rosa would do anything wrong, but because Emma had spent so long pretending she came from somewhere else. The elevator dinged in the hallway. Footsteps approached. A soft knock at the door. Emma didn't move, couldn't move. Natalie, ever the social butterfly, jumped up. I'll get it. No. Emma started, but it was too late. Natalie swung open the door, and there stood Rosa Torres, smiling nervously, holding a small container of homemade empanadas wrapped in foil. Hello, Rosa said warmly, her accent gentle. You must be Emma's friends. I'm Rosa. It's so nice to meet you. For a moment, nobody moved. Rosa stood in the doorway, her canvas tote bag slung over one shoulder, the container of empanadas held out like an offering. Her cardigan was clean but faded at the elbows. Her shoes were practical, worn. She looked exactly like what she was, a working woman who'd stopped by on her way to something else. Natalie recovered first, her social training kicking in. "Hi, Rosa, come in, come in." But Emma saw it. The microsecond hesitation, the way Natalie's eyes had traveled from Rosa's face to her clothes, to the foil-wrapped container, the brief flicker of confusion quickly masked by politeness. Rosa stepped inside, and Emma watched her mother take in the apartment. The high ceilings, the exposed brick, the chandelier that cost 3 months of Rosa's old salary. Pride and pain crossed Rosa's face in equal measure. "Emma," Rosa said softly, turning to her daughter, "your home is beautiful." Emma stood frozen by the kitchen entrance, her throat tight. "Thanks, Mom." Rosa moved toward her, arms opening for a hug, but Emma's body language was rigid, unwelcoming. Rosa caught it and stopped, her arms falling slowly to her sides. She held out the container instead. "I made empanadas. Your favorite. Beef and potato, the way you like them." Emma took the container mechanically. The foil was still warm. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." Rosa's smile was uncertain now, sensing the coldness. "I know you're busy with your friends. I won't stay long. She glanced around at the other women. "I wanted to see you, and I have news." Brooke had positioned herself on the couch, wineglass in hand, watching with the fascinated detachment of someone observing an interesting social experiment. Sloane and Jordan stood by the bookshelf, their expressions carefully neutral. "Everyone," Emma said, her voice hollow. "This is my mother, Rosa." "So nice to meet you," Natalie said again, too brightly. "Emma's told us so much about you." Rosa's face lit up. "She has?" Emma's stomach dropped. "Your work in property management sounds fascinating," Natalie continued, settling back onto the couch. "What kind of properties do you manage?" The apartment suddenly felt airless. Rosa blinked, confused. "Property management?" Emma stepped forward quickly. "Mom, didn't you say you were on your way somewhere? We don't want to make you late." But Rosa was still processing, her brow furrowed. "Mija, I don't understand. Property management? I mean, yes, my company handles properties, but—" "Your company?" Brooke leaned forward, interested now. "You own a property management company?" Rosa looked at Emma, clearly bewildered by the confusion. "Emma, didn't you tell them about Torres Property Solutions?" Silence crashed through the room. Emma felt the walls closing in. She could see it playing out. Her mother explaining the business, the cleaning origins, the humble beginnings, all of it spilling out in front of these women who thought Emma came from somewhere respectable. "Mom," Emma said, her voice sharp now, desperate. "You said you were in a hurry." Rosa flinched at the tone. Her eyes searched her daughter's face, and Emma watched understanding dawn there, watched her mother realize she wasn't welcome, that Emma was ashamed. The hurt that crossed Rosa's face was devastating. "Yes," Rosa said quietly, taking a step back toward the door. "Yes, you're right. I have to go. I just wanted to—" She trailed off, her voice thick. "It doesn't matter." "Wait," Jordan said, checking her phone. "Torres Property Solutions? Are you that Rosa Torres?" Everyone turned to look at her. Jordan's eyes were wide, her phone screen glowing. "Oh my God, you're speaking at the Business Leaders Summit tonight, at the Tribeca Hotel." The air left the room. "The what?" Natalie grabbed her own phone, fingers flying. Rosa stood very still, her hands clutching her tote bag. Emma felt reality fracturing around her. Sloane looked up from her phone, her mouth open. Holy shit, she's the keynote speaker, from janitor to CEO, building an empire against all odds. Brooke read aloud from her screen. Rosa Torres, founder and CEO of Torres Property Solutions, a commercial cleaning and property management company valued at $12 million, will share her journey from immigrant cleaning woman to one of New York's most successful Latina entrepreneurs. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Emma, then to Rosa, then back to Emma. Natalie's voice was very quiet. "Your mom is a CEO?" Emma couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Rosa stood in the doorway, her face unreadable now, closed off. "Emma," she said softly, "why did you tell them I was in property management? Why didn't you tell them the truth?" Emma's voice cracked. "I did. You made it sound like something else." Rosa's voice wasn't angry. It was worse than angry. It was sad. "You were ashamed." "Mom, no. You were ashamed of me." The words hung in the air like an accusation, like a confession, like a truth that couldn't be taken back. Emma's carefully constructed world crumbled. Brooke set down her wine glass slowly. "Emma, your mom is literally famous in the business world. She was in Forbes." "I didn't know," Emma whispered. "You didn't ask," Rosa said quietly. "You haven't asked me about my life in 2 years, mija." "Not really. You call for holidays. You text when you remember. But you don't ask." Tears burned Emma's eyes. Rosa straightened her shoulders, and Emma saw something shift in her mother's face, a kind of dignity settling over the hurt. "I have to go," Rosa said. "I have a speech to give." She turned toward the door. "Mrs. Torres," Jordan said suddenly. "Wait, is the event open? Can people still get tickets?" Rosa paused, her hand on the doorknob. "I think there might be some available at the door." "Why?" Jordan looked at the others. "Because I think we should go. If that's okay with you, Emma." Emma stood paralyzed, her world splitting open. Natalie was already grabbing her purse. "Absolutely. I want to hear this." "Me too," Sloane said. Brooke stood, smoothing her dress. "Emma, you coming?" All eyes turned to Emma. Her mother stood at the door, waiting, not speaking, just watching her daughter with those dark, knowing eyes that had seen Emma through every stage of her life. Emma opened her mouth, and nothing came out. Emma sat pressed against the window of the Uber, watching the city blur past through tear-blurred vision. Natalie sat beside her, silent for once. Brooke and Jordan were in another car behind them. Sloane had gone with Rosa. Emma's mother had walked out of the apartment with Sloane at her side. The two of them talking quietly as they waited for their ride. Emma had watched from the window as Rosa smiled at something Sloane said, as her mother, treated Emma's friend with more warmth than she'd shown her own daughter in the last 10 minutes, because Emma had earned that coldness. She'd earned every bit of it. "So," Natalie said finally, her voice careful, "your mom seems incredible." Emma said nothing. Building a business like that from nothing? That's actually insane, Emma. Why didn't you tell us? "Because I didn't know," Emma wanted to scream. "Because I stopped listening. Because every time my mother called, I was too busy, too distracted, too wrapped up in pretending to be someone I'm not. Because I was ashamed." "I don't know," Emma whispered. Natalie looked at her for a long moment. "The property management thing. You made it sound like she was just, a manager at some company. You know that, right?" "I know." "Why would you do that?" Emma's throat burned. "Because I didn't want you to know she used to clean offices. I didn't want you to know I grew up poor. I didn't want you to know that I'm not like you." The words came out broken. Raw. Natalie was quiet. Then, "Emma, nobody would have cared." "Yes, you would have." "No, yes." Emma turned to face her, tears streaming now. You would have. Maybe not consciously. Maybe you would have still been nice to me, but I would have been different in your eyes. The scholarship girl, the charity case, the one who didn't really belong. Natalie looked away, and her silence was answer enough. The car pulled up to the Tribeca Hotel. The entrance glowed with warm light. A banner hung above the doors, "Business Leaders of Tomorrow Summit." Well-dressed people moved through the lobby. Suits, cocktail dresses, name tags, purposeful strides. Emma's legs felt like lead as she stepped out of the car. Inside, the hotel was elegant. High ceilings, marble floors, a registration desk where attendees checked in. Emma could see Brooke and Jordan already there, talking to the woman behind the counter. And there, across the lobby, standing with a group of people in business attire, was her mother. Rosa was laughing at something someone said. Her posture was different here, confident, at ease. She gestured as she spoke, and the people around her listened intently, nodding, smiling. One man pulled out his phone to show her something. A woman touched Rosa's arm affectionately. These people respected her. These people saw what Emma had been too blind to see. Sloane stood slightly apart, watching Rosa with something like awe. Emma felt a hand on her shoulder. Jordan. Come on, they're about to start. They entered the ballroom. It was larger than Emma expected. Round tables filled the space, each set for 8. A stage at the front with a podium, microphone, and a large screen. 200 people, maybe more, milling about, networking, finding their seats. Emma followed her friends to a table near the middle. She sat down mechanically, barely registering the program booklet someone placed in front of her. On the cover was a photo of her mother, Rosa Torres, smiling, professional, wearing a blazer Emma had never seen. The title beneath read, "Breaking Barriers, An Evening with Rosa Torres." Emma opened the booklet with shaking hands. Inside was a full biography. Rosa Torres immigrated to the United States from El Salvador in 1995 with her infant daughter and less than $300. For 18 years, she worked as a janitor and cleaner, often holding multiple jobs simultaneously to provide for her family. In 2019, after years of saving and planning, she founded Torres Property Solutions with 3 clients and 1 employee, herself. Today, the company employs 47 people, manages contracts worth over $8 million annually, and has been recognized by the Small Business Administration as one of the fastest-growing minority-owned businesses in New York. Rosa has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, and Bloomberg Business. She sits on the advisory board for Latina Entrepreneurs of America and mentors young women from immigrant backgrounds. Rosa's mission is simple. No job is too small if it's done with dignity. Success isn't about forgetting where you came from. It's about honoring it. Emma's hands trembled so badly the booklet fell from her fingers. Natalie picked it up, read it, and passed it silently to Brooke. Around them, the room began to settle. Conversations quieted. People found their seats. A woman in a burgundy dress took the stage. The event organizer, Emma realized. She tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Business Leaders of Tomorrow Summit. We have an incredible program tonight, but I'm particularly excited about our keynote speaker." Emma's vision tunneled. I first learned about Rosa Torres 2 years ago. When I read her story in Forbes, I was blown away, not just by what she'd accomplished, but by how she'd accomplished it. With grit, with grace, with an unwavering commitment to her values. On the screen behind the podium, images appeared Rosa in her company uniform, standing with her team. Rosa shaking hands with city officials, Rosa at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and then an older photo. Rosa in a janitor's uniform, much younger, exhaustion written across her face, holding a mop, standing in an empty office building at night. Emma's breath caught. Rosa could have hidden this part of her story, the organizer continued. Many people do. But she chose to lead with it, to say, "This is where I started. This is what I survived. This is who I am." The room was silent, attentive. Tonight, Rosa will share her journey with us, and I promise you, by the time she's done, you'll understand what it really means to build something from nothing. Applause filled the room. The organizer smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Rosa Torres." The applause grew louder, and Emma watched her mother walk onto that stage. Rosa moved with quiet confidence, her head high, her smile genuine. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. She looked exactly like herself. She reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. Her eyes swept across the audience. And then they found Emma. For one terrible, beautiful moment, mother and daughter locked eyes across the crowded room. Rosa's expression didn't change. She didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked at her daughter with a gaze that held everything: love, disappointment, sadness, strength. Then she turned to address the room. "Thank you for that wonderful introduction," Rosa said, her accented voice clear and strong, "and thank you all for being here tonight." She paused, gripping the sides of the podium. "I want to start with a story about shame." Emma's heart stopped. Rosa's voice filled the room like a prayer. "When my daughter was 7 years old," she began, "she asked me why I couldn't pick her up from school like the other mothers, why I couldn't come to the daytime events, why I was always working." Emma's fingernails dug into her palms. "I told her the truth. I told her I cleaned offices at night so she could have a good school during the day. I told her I took extra shifts so she could have new shoes when she needed them. I told her that love sometimes looks like absence." Rosa's hands were steady on the podium now. Her voice never wavered. She cried. She said she understood. And then she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. Rosa smiled softly at the memory. She said, "Mama, when I grow up, I'm going to make enough money so you never have to work again." A few people in the audience made sounds of sympathy. "That's what children do," Rosa continued. "They try to fix things. They try to save us. They carry our struggles on their small shoulders and promise to make everything better." Emma felt Natalie glance at her sideways. "But somewhere along the way," Rosa said, her voice quieter now, "something shifts. The child grows up. They enter new worlds. They meet new people. And sometimes—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes they start to see their parents through someone else's eyes." The ballroom was absolutely silent. They start to notice the accent, the clothes that aren't quite right, the hands that are too rough, too worn, the stories that don't fit the narrative of success they're trying to build. Emma couldn't breathe. And slowly, without meaning to, they begin to create distance, not because they don't love us, but because they're trying to love themselves, trying to build an identity that doesn't carry the weight of struggle, trying to be someone who belongs. Rosa looked down at her notes, then pushed them aside. "I don't blame my daughter for this," she said clearly. "I want to be very clear about that. I don't blame her." Emma's vision blurred with tears. "Because I understand what it means to want to fit in. I understand what it means to be ashamed of where you come from. When I first came to this country, I tried to hide my accent. I tried to dress like the women I saw on television. I tried to make myself smaller, quieter, less other." She gripped the podium tighter. "It took me years to understand that I was fighting the wrong battle. The problem wasn't me. The problem was a world that made me believe I needed to change to be worthy of respect." Someone in the audience began to clap, but Rosa held up a gentle hand. "Please, let me finish." The room settled again. Tonight, I'm supposed to talk to you about business strategy, about scaling operations and managing growth and navigating the complexities of commercial contracts." She smiled slightly. "And I will, because that's important. That's valuable information." Rosa's eyes found Emma's table again. "But first, I want to talk about the thing nobody puts in the business books, the thing they don't teach at Harvard or Stanford or any of the fancy schools." She leaned forward into the microphone. "I want to talk about the cost of success when you're trying to forget where you came from." Emma felt like she was being flayed open in front of everyone. "For 18 years, I cleaned offices," Rosa said. "I scrubbed toilets. I mopped floors. I emptied trash cans that people didn't even see. I was invisible, a ghost who worked while everyone else slept." Her voice was matter of fact, neither self-pitying nor proud, just honest. "And every single night when I came home smelling like cleaning solution and exhaustion, my daughter would be waiting. She'd make me tea. She'd tell me about her day. She'd show me her homework, her drawings, her report cards." Rosa's voice cracked slightly for the first time. "She was never ashamed of me then, because children don't care about job titles or social status. They only care about love, and I gave her all the love I had." She took a breath, steadying herself. "But then she went to college, got a good job, started building a life. And somewhere in that process, the little girl who used to wait by the window for me became a woman who stopped answering my calls." Natalie shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I told myself it was normal. She was busy. She had her own life. I was proud of her. So proud." Rosa's eyes shone with unshed tears. But proud and heartbroken can exist in the same space. She paused, gathering herself. "Tonight I went to see my daughter. I hadn't seen her in weeks. I brought her empanadas, her favorite, and I was so excited to tell her about this event, about this speech, about how far we'd both come." Emma felt everyone at her table carefully not looking at her. "And when I arrived, she had friends over, successful, beautiful young women, and I saw something in my daughter's eyes I'd never seen before." Rosa's voice was steady now, surgical in its precision. "Fear. Not fear for me. Fear of me. Fear that I would embarrass her, that I would expose her, that I would reveal she wasn't who she'd been pretending to be." A tear slid down Emma's cheek. "One of her friends asked what I did for work, and my daughter told her I was in property management, which is technically true, but the way she said it—" Rosa shook her head slowly. "The way she said it was designed to hide the truth, to make me sound like something I'm not, to erase the years I spent on my knees scrubbing floors." The room was so quiet Emma could hear her own heartbeat. "And I realized in that moment," Rosa said, her voice breaking fully now, "that my daughter was ashamed of me, not of who I am now, but of who I was, of the mother who sacrificed everything, of the woman who loved her enough to work 3 jobs and still come home smiling." Rosa wiped her eyes quickly, professionally. "So before I tell you about profit margins and business development and all the things you came here to learn, I need to say this." She looked directly at Emma. "Success means nothing if you build it on the grave of your history. Money means nothing if you spend it trying to forget where you came from. Respect means nothing if you can't respect the people who made you possible." The words landed like stones. "My daughter is in this room tonight," Rosa said. "She didn't know I would be here. She didn't know about my business, my success, any of it. Because I tried to tell her and she never asked questions she never wanted to know. Because knowing would mean acknowledging what I used to be." Emma wanted to disappear, to dissolve into the floor, to cease existing. "But I'm going to tell her now, in front of all of you, what I should have told her a long time ago." Rosa's voice was strong again, unshakable. I am not ashamed of cleaning toilets. I am not ashamed of mopping floors. I am not ashamed of the work that kept us alive. Rosa's hands left the podium. She stood taller, her voice gaining strength with each word. I am proud of that work, because that work had dignity. That work had purpose. That work kept my daughter fed and clothed and safe. That work put her through college. That work gave her the foundation to become the woman she is today. The audience sat transfixed. And if my daughter is ashamed of that work, then she is ashamed of the very thing that made her life possible. She is ashamed of love. She is ashamed of sacrifice. She is ashamed of me. Emma's shoulders shook with silent sobs. So let me be very clear, Rosa said, her voice ringing through the ballroom. I would do it all again, every late night, every aching muscle, every moment of exhaustion, because that's what love looks like. Not the Instagram version, not the greeting card version, real love. The kind that costs you everything and asks for nothing in return. She picked up a glass of water, took a sip, and set it down deliberately. Now, let me tell you how I built a $12 million company. The shift in tone was masterful, professional, businesslike, as if she hadn't just torn open her heart for 200 strangers. In 2019, I had 18 years of experience in commercial cleaning. I knew every building code, every safety regulation, every chemical formula. I knew which products worked and which didn't. I knew how to manage time, resources, people. Rosa clicked a remote, and the screen behind her lit up with a simple slide. Torres Property Solutions, Year 1. But I had no business degree, no MBA, no connections, no startup capital beyond $12,000 in savings, and a maxed-out credit card. She smiled slightly. What I did have was something more valuable. I had relationships, 18 years of showing up on time, doing excellent work, treating every space like it was my own. The building managers knew me. The property owners knew me. The maintenance crews knew me. Another slide appeared. Photos of Rosa with various clients, all smiling, all clearly comfortable with her. When I told them I was starting my own company, 3 of them signed contracts immediately. Not because I offered them a lower price, because they trusted me, because I'd proven myself for nearly 2 decades. Emma watched through her tears as her mother transformed into someone she'd never seen before. Not the exhausted woman who came home late, not the quiet presence at parent-teacher conferences, but a CEO, a strategist, a woman who commanded respect. The first year, it was just me, Rosa continued. I did every job myself. I answered every call. I handled every complaint. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. A new slide. Rosa in her uniform, holding cleaning supplies, standing in front of a van with Torres Property Solutions painted on the side. Year 2, I hired my first employee, Maria. She'd worked alongside me for years. She was fast, thorough, trustworthy. I paid her more than I paid myself. Someone in the audience whistled appreciatively. People thought I was crazy, but I knew something they didn't. Good employees aren't an expense. They're an investment. Maria brought in 2 more clients through her own connections. Those clients led to 3 more. And suddenly, we were growing. Rosa's presentation was simple but effective. No flashy graphics, no corporate jargon, just clear, honest storytelling backed by numbers that spoke for themselves. Year 3, I had 7 employees and 12 contracts. Year 4, 15 employees and 30 contracts. Year 5, she paused for emphasis, 47 employees and 83 active contracts across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. The slide showed a graph trending sharply upward. How did I do it? 3 principles. Listen to them carefully because they work whether you're cleaning offices or running a hedge fund. She held up one finger. 1. Do excellent work, not good work, not acceptable work, excellent work, every single time. No exceptions, no shortcuts. Your reputation is the only asset that actually matters. A second finger joined the first. 2. Treat people like human beings. Your employees aren't tools. Your clients aren't dollar signs. They're people with families and struggles and dreams just like you. When you treat them with respect, they remember. They stay loyal. They refer others. A third finger. 3. Never forget what you learned in the struggle. The skills I developed as a cleaner, attention to detail, time management, problem solving under pressure, working with dignity no matter how invisible I felt, those are the same skills that made me a successful CEO. She lowered her hand. You see, the world wants you to believe there's a hierarchy of work, that some jobs are noble and others are beneath you, that you should climb the ladder and never look back. Rosa's voice hardened slightly. But that's a lie designed to keep people in their place. Every job has value. Every worker deserves respect. And the moment you forget that, the moment you start believing you're better than the person who cleans your office or serves your coffee, you've lost something essential. She let the words settle. My company succeeds because I never forgot. I pay my employees living wages plus benefits. I promote from within. I provide English classes for those who need them. I hire people others won't hire. Single mothers, immigrants, people with criminal records trying to rebuild their lives. A slide appeared showing the Torres Property Solutions team, a diverse group of smiling faces. And you know what? My turnover rate is 3%. Industry average is 47%. My clients stay with us an average of 4 years. Industry average is 18 months. My profit margins are 22% above industry standard. She let those numbers hang in the air. Good business and good ethics aren't opposites. They're partners. When you take care of people, people take care of you. Rosa advanced to the next slide, a photo of her receiving an award, shaking hands with a city official. Last year, I was named Small Business Owner of the Year by the New York City Chamber of Commerce. I was featured in Forbes, Bloomberg, Entrepreneur magazine. I've been invited to speak at Columbia, NYU, and Wharton. She paused, and her voice softened again. And none of it would have been possible if I'd been ashamed of where I started. Emma felt those words like a physical blow. Because shame kills ambition, Rosa continued. Shame makes you hide. Shame makes you lie. Shame makes you small. She looked out across the audience, her gaze sweeping the room. How many of you came from struggle? Raise your hands. Slowly, hands went up throughout the ballroom, more than half the room. How many of you have changed your story to sound more impressive, made your background seem easier than it was? Fewer hands, but still dozens. How many of you have parents or grandparents who did work you wouldn't tell your colleagues about? More hands. Uncomfortable shifting in seats. Rosa nodded slowly. We all do it. We all smooth the rough edges of our histories. We all want to seem like we've always belonged in rooms like this one. She leaned into the microphone, but I'm telling you, the rough edges are where the power lives. The struggle is what made you strong. The shame you carry is actually your greatest asset if you can transform it into pride. Rosa pulled a photograph from her jacket pocket and held it up. The camera zoomed in, projecting the image onto the screen behind her. It showed a much younger Rosa, maybe 25, standing in front of a small apartment building. She held an infant in her arms, Emma, and wore a tired smile. Her clothes were worn but clean. Behind them, a rusty fire escape climbed the brick wall. This is where we lived when we first came to New York, Rosa said. Washington Heights, a studio apartment, 400 square feet. The radiator didn't work half the winter. The ceiling leaked when it rained. We shared a bathroom with 3 other families. She stared at the image for a moment before continuing. I'd left El Salvador with nothing but my daughter and hope. Her father had left before she was born. My family told me I was crazy to go to America alone. They said I'd fail, that I'd come back broken. Her jaw tightened. I promised myself I wouldn't. I promised my daughter I would give her a life worth living. Another photo appeared. Rosa in a fast food uniform. My first job was at McDonald's, $4.25 an hour. I worked the breakfast shift 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then I'd rush to my second job, housekeeping at a hotel in Midtown, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Emma watched her friends' faces. They were riveted now, leaning forward. Emma was in daycare 13 hours a day. I'd pick her up at 10:30 at night, exhausted, and she'd be the only child left. The workers would give me looks, like I was a bad mother for leaving her so long. Rosa's voice cracked slightly. They didn't know I was doing it for her, that every extra hour I worked was another dollar toward a better neighborhood, a better school, a better future. She clicked to the next slide. Emma as a little girl, maybe 6, wearing a backpack and smiling. When Emma started elementary school, I quit the hotel job and took night cleaning work instead. It paid better, and I could be with her in the evenings. I'd help with her homework, make her dinner, tuck her into bed. Then I'd leave at 11 p.m. and work until 7 a.m. Rosa's voice was steady now, factual. I slept from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then I'd wake up, pick Emma up from school, and we'd have our afternoons together. That was our time. That was when I could be her mother. Someone in the audience wiped their eyes. She never went hungry, never wore dirty clothes, never missed a field trip because I couldn't afford it, even though sometimes I couldn't afford it. I just didn't eat that week. Rosa looked directly at Emma again. She had everything she needed, and she never knew what it cost. The screen changed to show a report card, straight A's, teacher comments praising Emma's intelligence and work ethic. Emma was brilliant, still is. She got into a good high school, then college. With scholarships, thank God, but scholarships don't cover everything. Room and board, books, living expenses. Rosa's hands gripped the podium again. I took on a third job, weekend shifts at a laundromat. I sent her money every month. Not much. $50 here, $100 there, whatever I could spare. She smiled sadly. She'd call me crying, saying she felt guilty, that I was working too hard. I told her not to worry. I told her to focus on her studies. I told her I was fine. A pause. I was lying. I wasn't fine. My body was breaking down. My knees hurt so badly I could barely climb stairs. My hands developed arthritis from the chemicals, and the cold water I had constant back pain. She held up her hands, and the camera zoomed in on them, weathered, scarred, the knuckles slightly swollen. These hands built my daughter's future. These hands paid for her education. These hands made it possible for her to sit in an expensive apartment with her successful friends and pretend she came from somewhere else. The words weren't bitter, just honest. When Emma graduated college and got her first job, I was so proud. She moved to Manhattan, got a nice apartment, started building her career. I thought, finally she made it. All the sacrifice was worth it. Rosa's voice dropped lower, but she started calling less, visiting less. When we did talk, she seemed distracted, busy. She'd ask about me quickly. "How are you, Mom? Everything okay?" But she'd never wait for the full answer. Emma buried her face in her hands. I understood. She was young, ambitious. Building her life, I didn't want to burden her with my problems, so I kept them to myself. Rosa clicked to a new slide, a business license. In 2018, I had a moment of clarity. I was 50 years old cleaning an executive's office at 3 a.m., and I found myself reading a business magazine someone had left on the desk, an article about immigrant entrepreneurs. She smiled slightly, and I thought, why not me? I know this industry. I know what clients need. I know how to do this better than the companies I work for. The next slide showed spreadsheets covered in handwritten notes. For 6 months I planned. I saved every penny. I researched. I wrote a business plan on notebook paper during my lunch breaks. I made lists of potential clients, pricing strategies, equipment needs. Another slide, Rosa signing papers. In January 2019, I registered Torres Property Solutions as an LLC. I told Emma I'd started my own business. She said, "That's great, Mom," and changed the subject. The audience was silent, absorbed. I didn't push. I thought she was just busy, that eventually she'd ask for details. But she never did. Rosa's voice remained calm, but Emma heard the pain underneath. For 5 years, I built this company. 5 years of 18-hour days, difficult decisions, risks that terrified me. 5 years of growth and setbacks and victories, and my daughter never asked about any of it. She looked out at the room. I don't tell you this for sympathy. I tell you this because it's important to understand what happens when we stop seeing the people who raised us, when we reduce them to their past instead of recognizing their present. Rosa clicked to a slide showing newspaper clippings and magazine covers, all featuring her story. Emma didn't know I was in Forbes. She didn't know I'd hired 47 people. She didn't know I was mentoring young entrepreneurs or speaking at universities. She didn't know because she never asked. And I didn't tell her because I was tired of her polite disinterest. The truth landed heavily. Tonight, when I showed up at her apartment, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear that I would embarrass her, that her friends would see me as just the cleaning lady, just the immigrant mother with the accent and the cheap clothes. Rosa's voice rose slightly. What Emma doesn't understand, what I need her to understand, is that I am the cleaning lady still. That's not my past, that's my foundation, that's my identity. I'm not a CEO despite being a cleaner. I'm a CEO because I was a cleaner. She let the words ring out. The skills that make me successful are the skills I learned on my knees, with a mop in my hands. Attention to detail, efficiency, problem solving, dignity in every task, respect for every person, regardless of their position. Rosa's eyes shone with emotion now. And if my daughter is ashamed of the cleaning lady, then she's ashamed of the CEO, because they're the same person. They've always been the same person. Rosa stepped away from the podium, microphone in hand now, pacing slowly across the stage like a preacher finding her rhythm. "Let me tell you what shame does to a family," she said, her voice softer but somehow more powerful. "It builds walls. Invisible ones. You're sitting across from someone you love, someone who gave you life, and there's this gulf between you that neither of you knows how to cross." She stopped center stage. The child thinks, if I tell her about my life, she'll see how different we are. She'll feel bad about herself. She'll realize I've moved beyond her. Rosa's voice took on a different tone, almost mocking. The parent thinks, if I tell her about my struggles, I'll burden her. If I tell her about my successes, she'll think I'm bragging. Either way, I'll make her uncomfortable, so I stay silent. She shook her head slowly. And so you have these conversations about nothing. The weather, work in general terms, surface-level pleasantries. You say, I love you because you do, desperately, but you don't know each other anymore. You've become strangers who share blood and history, but no present. Emma felt Natalie's hand find hers under the table, squeezing gently. My daughter stopped knowing me 5 years ago, Rosa said, and now there was steel in her voice, Not because I changed, because she stopped looking. She saw what she expected to see, the poor immigrant mother who needed her pity, and never bothered to look closer. Rosa walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly into the audience. How many of you have done this? Made assumptions about your parents? Decided you knew their whole story? Stopped asking questions because you were afraid of the answers? Or worse, because you weren't interested? Uncomfortable shifting throughout the room. We do this in business too, Rosa continued. We look at someone's title, their appearance, their background, and we think we know them. We decide who's worth our time and who isn't, who can help us and who can't, who belongs in the room and who doesn't. She turned back to face Emma's table directly. Tonight, when my daughter's friends discovered who I was, everything changed. Suddenly, I was worth listening to, worth respecting, worth knowing. But 15 minutes earlier, when they thought I was just a working woman stopping by with homemade food, I was invisible. Brooke visibly flinched. That's not a criticism, Rosa said quickly. That's just honesty. We've all been taught to value certain things over others, money over service, degrees over experience, success over sacrifice. She set the microphone back on the podium and gripped it with both hands. But I'm here to tell you that the woman you saw 15 minutes ago and the woman you see now are the same person. The only thing that changed is your perception, and that should scare you. The room was dead silent, because if you can't see value in people until they prove themselves according to your metrics, you're going to miss most of the wisdom in the world. You're going to overlook the teachers, the mentors, the helpers. You're going to walk past your blessings because they don't look like you expected. Rosa's voice cracked again, and she didn't hide it this time. My daughter walked past her blessing for 5 years. She had a mother who would have told her everything about building a business, about overcoming obstacles, about staying true to yourself, but she never asked because she'd already decided who I was. Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every head in the ballroom turned. Emma stood there trembling, tears streaming down her face, unable to move forward or sit back down. Rosa looked at her daughter and stopped speaking. The silence stretched between them across the crowded room. Mother and daughter, CEO and marketing executive, 2 women separated by 50 feet and 5 years of unspoken pain. Mom, Emma's voice came out broken, barely audible. Rosa waited. Mom, I'm so sorry. The microphone picked up Rosa's whispered response. I know, mija. I didn't know because you didn't ask. Rosa's voice was gentle now, not accusatory, just sad. You didn't ask. Emma took a step toward the stage, then stopped. Her whole body shook with sobs. I was ashamed. I was so ashamed, not of you, of me, of where I came from, of being poor, of being different. I know, Rosa said again. I wanted to be like them. Emma gestured helplessly at her friends. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong somewhere. And I thought if I could just hide the past, if I could just be someone else, you could be happy? Rosa finished. Were you happy? Emma shook her head, unable to speak. That's because you can't build happiness on lies, Emma. You can't build a life on shame. It doesn't work. The foundation cracks. Eventually, everything collapses. Rosa set down the microphone and walked to the edge of the stage, sitting down so her legs dangled over the side, making herself smaller, more accessible. Come here, she said simply. Emma moved like a sleepwalker, navigating between tables, aware of 200 pairs of eyes watching her, but unable to care anymore. She reached the stage and stood there, looking up at her mother. Rosa opened her arms, and Emma broke completely. She collapsed against her mother's knees, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe, all the shame and guilt and self-hatred pouring out of her in waves. Rosa's hands came to rest on her daughter's head, stroking her hair the way she had when Emma was little. "It's okay," Rosa murmured. "It's okay, baby. I've got you." "I'm sorry," Emma gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud, and I was so stupid, and I wasted so much time." "We have time now," Rosa said firmly. "We have right now." She tilted Emma's face up, wiping her tears with her thumbs. "Look at me, Emma. Really look at me." Emma forced herself to meet her mother's eyes. "I am not ashamed of being a cleaning woman. I am not ashamed of being poor. I am not ashamed of my accent or my clothes or my background. I am proud of every part of my journey, every single part." Rosa's voice intensified. "And you need to learn to be proud too, not of the lie you've been telling, but of the truth of where you really came from, of the mother who loved you enough to work herself to the bone, of the strength it took to climb out of poverty, of the sacrifices that made your life possible." She cupped Emma's face in both hands. "You come from love, Emma. Fierce, unconditional love. That's your inheritance. That's your foundation. And if you're ashamed of that, you're ashamed of the strongest thing you'll ever have." Emma pressed her forehead against her mother's knee and wept. Around them, the ballroom remained silent. Some people were crying. Others sat with their hands pressed to their mouths. No one moved. No one checked their phone. They were all witnessing something too raw, too real to interrupt. Finally, Rosa spoke again, her voice carrying across the room even without the microphone. "Success means nothing if you're ashamed of love." Emma couldn't stop shaking. Her mother's hands were in her hair, steady and warm, the same hands that had braided her hair before school, that had checked her forehead for fever, that had worked until they bled to give her everything, and Emma had been ashamed of them. "I don't know how to fix this," Emma whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "I don't know how to be better." Rosa was quiet for a moment, then she said, "You start by telling the truth." Emma pulled back slightly, looking up at her mother through swollen eyes. "What?" Rosa gestured to the room, to the 200 people watching, to Emma's friends sitting frozen at their table, to the event organizers standing uncertainly in the wings. "Tell them the truth. All of it. No more hiding." "Mom, I can't." "Yes, you can." Rosa's voice was firm but not unkind. "You can do hard things. I taught you that. You just forgot." Emma's legs felt weak. She looked back at her table, at Natalie and Brooke and Jordan and Sloane. They were all watching her with expressions she couldn't quite read: shock, sympathy, discomfort, maybe even respect. "I don't," Emma started, but Rosa cut her off. "Emma, you've been living in fear for so long. Fear of being found out, fear of not belonging, fear of being judged. But look around." Rosa swept her hand across the ballroom. "Everyone here just watched you fall apart, and no one left. No one laughed. They're waiting to see if you're brave enough to stand back up." Emma closed her eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Rosa leaned down and whispered, "I didn't raise a coward. I raised a fighter. Now fight." Something shifted in Emma's chest, something old and buried and true. She wiped her face with shaking hands and stood up. The ballroom seemed impossibly large suddenly. All those faces, all those eyes. Rosa retrieved the microphone from the podium and held it out to her daughter. "Tell your story," she said simply. Emma took the microphone. Her hand trembled so badly it made a soft rattling sound against the metal. She turned to face the audience. For a long moment she couldn't speak. The silence pressed down on her like a physical weight. Then she said, My name is Emma Torres, and I've been lying about my mother for 2 years. Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. I told people she was in property management because I didn't want them to know she used to clean offices. I avoided her calls because I was afraid she'd say something that would give away where I came from. I stopped asking about her life because I didn't want to hear about struggles. I wanted to pretend I came from somewhere easy, somewhere respectable. Emma's tears started again, but she didn't stop talking. I grew up poor, really poor. We lived in a studio apartment with broken heat and cockroaches and neighbors who fought at 3 a.m. My mom worked 3 jobs, sometimes 4. I wore clothes from the Salvation Army and pretended they were vintage. I did my homework by flashlight when we couldn't pay the electric bill. She looked at her friends. And when I finally got out, when I got my scholarship, got my job, got my nice apartment, I decided to forget all of it, to pretend it never happened. Because I thought that's what success meant, erasing your past, becoming someone new. Emma's voice grew stronger, steadier. But tonight I learned something. You can't build a life on lies. You can't build relationships on shame. And you can't become someone new by destroying who you were. She turned to look at her mother, still sitting on the edge of the stage. My mother is the strongest person I've ever known. She immigrated here alone with a baby and $300. She worked jobs that broke her body. She sacrificed everything, her health, her time, her youth, so I could have opportunities she never had. Emma's voice broke, and I repaid her by being ashamed, by hiding her, by treating her like something to be managed instead of someone to be celebrated. She faced the audience again. I came here tonight with my friends. I was trying to impress them, trying to prove I belonged in their world. And then my mom showed up at my apartment just to see me, just because she missed me, and all I felt was panic. Emma looked at Natalie, Brooke, Jordan, Sloan. I introduced her quickly. I didn't offer her a seat. I made her feel unwelcome in my home, my mother, the woman who gave me everything. Her voice hardened with self-loathing. And then we came here, and I found out my mother, who I've been avoiding, who I've been treating like an embarrassment, is a CEO, is successful, is respected, is everything I've been pretending to be. Emma laughed bitterly. The irony is, if I'd just asked, if I just listened, I would have known. I would have been part of her journey. I could have celebrated with her, supported her, learned from her. But I was too busy being ashamed to notice she'd surpassed me. She paused, gathering her courage for what came next. But here's the thing. Even if she hadn't become successful, even if she was still cleaning offices, she would still deserve my respect, my love, my attention. Because success isn't measured in money or titles. It's measured in character, in sacrifice, in love. Emma looked directly at her mother. Mom, you are successful because you raised a daughter on your own, because you kept us alive when I don't know how you did it, because you loved me so fiercely that you worked yourself to exhaustion and never once complained. That's success. That's the only success that actually matters. Rosa's eyes shimmered with tears. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Emma continued. I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking for one anyway, because I want to know you, the real you, not the version I made up in my head, not the simplified story I told people, but the actual woman, with all your complexity and strength and wisdom. Emma's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I want to hear about your business, about how you built it, about your challenges and your victories. I want to know about your life, your real life, not just the sanitized version I can handle. I want to ask questions. I want to listen. I want to learn from you. She took a shaky breath. And I want to stop lying. To myself. To everyone. I want to tell the truth about where I came from, about who raised me, about what it took to get here. because that truth is beautiful, that truth is powerful, and I've been a fool to hide it." Emma turned back to the audience, her voice stronger now. "To everyone here, especially to you," she looked at her friends. "I'm sorry for lying. I'm sorry for pretending to be someone I'm not. The truth is, I come from poverty. My mother cleaned toilets. We struggled, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore. I'm proud of it, because it made me strong. It taught me resilience. It gave me a mother who is the most incredible person I've ever known." She held up the microphone one last time. "My name is Emma Torres. I am the daughter of Rosa Torres, and that is the greatest accomplishment of my life." Emma handed the microphone back to her mother and collapsed against her, crying again, but differently this time. Not with shame, with release. Rosa wrapped her arms around her daughter and held her tight. "I forgive you," she whispered into Emma's hair. "I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second." "I love you, Mama," Emma sobbed. "I love you so much." "I know, mija, I know." The ballroom erupted in applause. The applause didn't stop. It started as scattered clapping, then grew into a wave that rolled through the entire ballroom. People stood. Some wiped their eyes. Others clutched their chests. A few pulled out their phones, not to record, but to text someone, a parent maybe, or a child they hadn't called in too long. Rosa helped Emma stand, steadying her daughter with one arm while holding the microphone with the other. "Thank you," Rosa said simply, her voice cutting through the applause. The room quieted. "Thank you for witnessing this, for holding space for us, for letting my daughter be brave." She looked out at the sea of faces. This is what real transformation looks like. Not a before and after photo, not a success story wrapped in a neat bow, but messy, painful, beautiful truth-telling. This is the work that actually matters. Rosa turned to Emma, speaking into the microphone but looking only at her daughter. "You asked how to be better. Here's how. You tell the truth even when it hurts. You honor the people who loved you even when it's inconvenient. You stop performing and start living. That's it. That's the whole formula." She handed the microphone to one of the organizers and took both of Emma's hands in hers. "Now, you and I are going to leave this stage. We're going to sit down and have a real conversation, maybe the first real one in years. And then we're going to start again, not from scratch, from truth." Emma nodded, unable to speak. They walked off the stage together, Rosa's arm around Emma's shoulders. The applause continued as they made their way through the ballroom. At Emma's table, her friends stood awkwardly. Natalie spoke first, her voice small. "Emma, Don't," Emma said gently, but firmly. "Please. Not right now." But Rosa stopped, turning to face the 4 young women. "May I say something?" she asked. They nodded, wide-eyed. "You are not the problem," Rosa said clearly. "You didn't make my daughter ashamed. She did that to herself. You're just young women trying to navigate your lives, same as her, same as everyone." She looked at each of them in turn. "But I will say this. Take a good look at what happened here tonight, because this is what happens when we forget where we come from, when we value image over substance, when we let shame dictate our choices." Rosa's voice softened. "Each of you has a story. Each of you came from somewhere. And I'm willing to bet that somewhere isn't as perfect as you pretend it is. None of our stories are. So do yourselves a favor. Don't wait 5 years to tell the truth. Don't wait until you're standing in front of a room full of strangers sobbing, wishing you could go back and do it differently." Brooke's eyes filled with tears. "My dad was a janitor," she whispered suddenly. "He worked his way up to executive, but I never tell anyone about the janitor part." Jordan nodded slowly. "My mom was a waitress until I was 12. She married my stepdad, and suddenly we had money. I act like we were always wealthy." Sloane looked at the floor. "My family went bankrupt when I was in high school. We lived in a motel for 8 months. I've never told anyone." Natalie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My grandmother raised me because my parents were addicts. She cleaned houses. I've been telling people she was in domestic services and letting them think it meant something else." Rosa looked at them with infinite compassion. "Your stories are not shameful," she said. "Your stories are your power. The sooner you claim them, the freer you'll be." She squeezed Emma's hand. "Come on, mija. Let's go home." They walked toward the exit together, but before they reached it, a voice called out, "Ms. Torres?" They turned. A young woman stood there, mid-20s, wearing a catering uniform, holding a tray of empty glasses. Her name tag read, Jasmine. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Jasmine said, her accent thick. "Maybe Central American, maybe Caribbean. I heard your speech, and I wanted to say thank you." Rosa smiled warmly. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. I work for the catering company." She glanced nervously at her supervisor across the room. "I'm not supposed to talk to guests, but I had to, because what you said about dignity in every job, I needed to hear that." She looked at Emma. "I have a daughter. She's 6, and sometimes I worry. I worry that one day she'll be ashamed of me, that she'll see me serving other people and think I'm not enough." Rosa stepped forward and took Jasmine's free hand. "Listen to me," she said intently. "Your daughter will only be ashamed if you teach her to be ashamed. So teach her the opposite. Teach her that honest work has honor, that service has value, that a mother's love is the most powerful force in the world." Jasmine's eyes welled up. "Thank you. Thank you so much. What's your daughter's name?" "Camila." "Camila is lucky to have you, Jasmine. Don't ever forget that." Jasmine nodded, unable to speak, and hurried back to work. Emma watched the exchange, something settling deeper in her chest. Understanding. Recognition. A glimpse of who her mother had always been, the woman who saw everyone, who honored everyone, who understood that dignity wasn't earned through titles, but through character. They finally made it outside. The night air was cool and clean. The city hummed around them. Traffic, voices, life continuing in every direction. Rosa hailed a cab. "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "My apartment," Rosa said. "I'm going to make you tea. You're going to tell me about your real life, not the curated version. And then I'm going to tell you about mine, and we're going to spend the whole night remembering how to be mother and daughter." The cab pulled up. They climbed in. As they drove through the city streets, Emma rested her head on her mother's shoulder the way she used to as a child. Rosa's hand came up to stroke her hair. "Mama?" Emma said softly. "Yes, mija. Tell me about your business. Everything. From the beginning." Rosa smiled, and Emma felt it more than saw it. "Okay," Rosa said. "It started with 3 clients and a dream." As her mother began to talk, really talk, sharing details and struggles and victories Emma had never heard, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like she was home, not in a place, but in a truth, in a story that was hers, in a mother's love that had never wavered, even when the daughter had lost her way. The cab wound through Manhattan, carrying them toward Washington Heights, toward a small apartment that suddenly seemed more precious than any luxury high-rise, because it was where her mother lived, and her mother, Rosa Torres, immigrant, cleaner, CEO, survivor, warrior, the strongest person Emma had ever known, was finally someone Emma was ready to truly see, not despite who she'd been, but because of it. 3 months later, Emma stood in front of her building, watching the moving truck pull away. She'd broken her lease. given up the expensive apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and designer furniture, donated half her wardrobe. Simplified. She'd also quit her job, not impulsively, thoughtfully. After long conversations with her mother about what she actually wanted versus what she thought she was supposed to want. She'd taken a position at Torres Property Solutions, not out of guilt, out of genuine interest. She was developing the company's marketing strategy, building their online presence, helping her mother scale the business she'd built. They worked together now. They talked every day. They knew each other. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Brunch Sunday? I want you to meet my grandmother, the one who cleaned houses." I finally told her I'd been hiding her story. She wants to meet the friend who inspired me to stop. Emma smiled and typed back, "I'd love that." Another text, this one from Brooke. "My dad's coming to the city next week. Dinner at my place? I'm making his favorite. The dish he used to make when we had nothing. Want you and your mom to come?" "We'll be there," Emma responded. She looked up at the sky, that impossible New York sky, barely visible between buildings, but somehow still there, still vast. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Success means nothing if you're ashamed of love. Emma finally understood. Success wasn't about hiding who you were, it was about honoring it, claiming it, building from it. She picked up her bag and headed to the subway. She had work to do, a business to help grow, a mother to learn from, a story to tell truthfully. And for the first time in 5 years, Emma Torres knew exactly who she was.